There you are live.
All righty, welcome to the Thursday, August 18th Planning Commission meeting. Call the meeting to order. We're going to do something, just a couple of words of explanation. We're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to convene the meeting, do just a few pieces of business, and then we're going to adjourn, have a work session, and then reconvene the meeting to do a couple of new pieces of business. And the reason for doing things in that order is that, we want to give the folks who are going to conduct the work session the opportunity to do that without sort of having to sit through our sort of administrative business new business at the end. So it's a little unorthodox, but I think it's the best use of everybody's time. Can we have the roll call, Kimberly, please?
Mr. Klein,
Present.
Mr. Sale,
Here.
Mr. Iams,
Here.
Mr. Waldman,
Here.
Ms. Rubio Dorsey.
Here.
We had Mr. Spakunutis, but I don't see him now. He might come back, I guess. And
Yeah.
we're not expecting Ms. Butler, correct?
That's correct. Yep.
Okay, so we have 5 at the moment.
Great. Thank you. Okay, next order of business is our approval of minutes from July 21st. Let me go ahead and share those real quick. We had primarily 2 presentations on the comprehensive plan and the city dock presentation. So they were mostly informational. So here are minutes. The workforce housing was delayed until today for the work session anyway. So the comprehensive plan and city dock resiliency plan that was held in conjunction with the Historic Preservation Commission. And Kimberly captured those minutes very well from watching the video after the fact. And I would entertain hopefully everybody's had a chance to review them. I would entertain a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes for July.
Second.
Any discussion on them? Not hearing any. All in favor, say aye.
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 I think they're not unanimous. So I would like to now make one agenda modification. And that is to add the approval of the 2 opinions from, I guess that was 2 meetings ago, the 2 Eastport projects, RNC 2021-029 and RNC 2022-008. Those are the 9 Eastern Avenue and the 424 Second Street projects. And if you remember, those were pretty straightforward. And so I would entertain a motion to add that to the agenda now.
So moved.
And I'll second that. All in favor of adding those? Well, first, any discussion? All in favor of adding those 2 items, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Great. So
Aye.
let me share those 2. So these 2 were the 2 opinions written by our prior consul, Christopher Beard, and those have been circulated to everybody, and they're essentially as he wrote them, with 1 addition on the 9 Eastern Avenue project. And there was basically just one paragraph that I added. That let me show this real quickly here. That talked about our feelings about how they handled stormwater management, and it's this paragraph here that we appreciated their proactive work towards additional stormwater management. So other than that, that's the only change other than what was circulated earlier. So I would entertain a motion to approve both of these so those projects can get underway.
So moved.
Do we have a
I'll
second?
I'll
Great.
second.
Thanks. Any discussion on these? Not hearing any. All in favor of approving these two opinions as written, say aye.
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 Great. Any abstentions or nays? Just to be clear. No. Great. Then those are approved. And so, Jackie, you have our permission to sign those on our behalf.
Right, we will, I'll print those out and modify the consent portion at the bottom and sign them and distribute them to the planners for.
Okay.
Okay,
Yep. Thank you very much.
May I make a note for the record that the council that has been hired by the city is not present tonight? No, somebody is present, Lisa
Oh,
Bell.
I see.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Okay.
Asked to be here tonight? Because it's a work session mostly?
Well, we have a little bit of business at the end, but certainly not needed for the work session. But
And just to note that Tom is back as well.
great. Thank you.
so did he vote? Did he just participate in the vote, Alex?
I thought he did, but he can speak for himself.
If Mr. Safakanudis participated in the vote, we should change. Well, I think we're still okay because I think there were 5 people who heard the opinions on July 7th.
Yeah.
So I don't think we need to make a change at the end. I'm sorry.
No. Okay.
Just making sure, dotting my i's. Okay. Nope.
All righty. Well, at this point, we are getting to the work session. So I will entertain a motion to adjourn while we have the work session, and then we will reconvene afterwards.
Are we adjourning or going into recess, or how do we do that?
So we're going to adjourn and then reconvene when the work session's over. But the broadcast will continue on YouTube because I think the work session on known as the Willows of Forest Drive, I think has some interest in the public. It's been publicized in the paper, and so I'd like to continue to broadcast this on YouTube so the work session can be available for the public to watch. So anybody want to make a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn.
And I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we are adjourned, and let's now go into our work session. Tom, are you, is the planner of record here, are you going to make some statements first, or?
The planning commission should have received last week packets in their mailboxes at their home of all the exhibits that the applicant intends to present this evening. So I'll actually just turn it over to them and let them give their presentation, and I'm here for questions and guidance.
And by the way, we much appreciated the packages because it's nice to look at some of that stuff in a large format. So thank you for that. Okay, well, whoever's going to start off, go ahead and take it away.
Hi, good evening. This is David Holden, and I'm not sure if you can, how well you can see us. We've all assembled at Bay Engineering at Terry Schumann's office just for a kind of ease of coordination. I'm with Ingerman, and thank you for the opportunity to have this work session to go over our proposal. We've partnered with the Housing Initiative Partnership, and their executive directors here with me, and also with the American Legion for this application. I'm going to let the folks with me in the room, we'll just go around, they can introduce themselves just so you understand who's here. So Judy Miller, if you want to.
Hi, I'm Judy Miller, Architecture by Design.
Hi, I'm Tara Stout. I'm the real estate broker on the deal. I live in Annapolis, and I've also been sort of the liaison between Ingerman and the Legion.
Good evening. My name is Colleen Moon, and I'm currently a member and officer of the American Legion and a resident of Annapolis.
Hi, I'm Mary Ann Dillon. I don't know if you can see me. Maybe I should stand up. I'm the executive director of Housing Initiative Partnership. We're the nonprofit partner working with Ingerman. This will be the 5th deal that we've done with Ingerman. They've all been very successful. We provide the resident services to the tenants after the project is complete. So we have a long-term presence at the property, and we're looking forward to this partnership.
Deborah Schwab, the landscape architect on the project.
And Terry Schumann with the engineering. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. And also Natalie DiFilippo and Matt Zayak are my colleagues who are also in attendance, and we're represented by counsel Tony Crystal, and he had a conflict. He's going to arrive a little bit later to participate in the call. I thought I'd just start with a little overview of kind of who we are and what our concept is for this project on Forest Drive. Ingerman is a developer, contractor, and property manager of multifamily housing, senior housing, workforce housing, and luxury housing. We work in Maryland, Delaware, Pennsylvania, New Jersey. So we'll be the general contractor and the long-term property manager as well. And this project includes 58 apartments, a mix of 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms. You'll hear more about the specific design from Judy Miller when we get into it. As I mentioned, this is affordable housing. It's targeted to residents between 20% and 60% of the area median income, which in terms of real numbers, that's in the $20,000 to $60,000 range, depending on household size. And the rents are going to range for some of the more affordable units in the $400 range and up to around $1,300 for some of the higher income levels, based on our market studies and other work around the city. There's a real critical need for quality affordable housing at that targets these income levels with these rent levels. The development will include both indoor activity areas for the residents as well as outdoor activity, along with offices for full-time staff and full-time maintenance support. And they'll still be there during business hours, Monday through Friday, and supported by 7-day-a-week, 24-hour backup coverage in case there's any need for support in those hours. That's my overview of Ingerman's role. I thought I'd let Mary Ann talk a little bit about HIPS as our partner on the resident services component.
Okay, we do this at every property that we're partners on. I think there are 7 properties we're providing resident services with. We're also partners on the Town Courts project, which was just opened a few months ago on West Street. So we're providing resident services at that property as well. We're based in Prince George's County, but we own and operate properties kind of regionally. This will be our 2nd property that we'll do in Annapolis. And at the back end, we work with the residents and find out what their needs are and their priorities. And we design programs based on what their needs are. And so we do both recreational activities, for families, for the parents. But more important, we do one-on-one coaching to help to make sure that people are attached to the kind of resources that they need to get, any kind of access to resources to make sure that they can sustain their housing and stay there for the long haul. We also have a big housing counseling component at HIP. And while we don't necessarily do that with our resident services, we do have the ability to promote homeownership for our residents long-term when they're ready for it. After they've been able to save money, we can help them get ready and prepared for homeownership so they can move out and beyond this housing.
Thank you. And then as far as the plans for the Legion properties, you want to talk about that?
Yeah, this is a special mixed plan development, and we've incorporated the Legion because it sits right between the parcels that Ingerman is buying, and we thought it was nice to have a synergy. We've also discussed with the Legion the ability for them to use the garden, what referred to as the garden parcel, which is adjacent to Newtown Drive, to realize their vision of having a garden for heroes, which is, some sort of a community garden, some nice reflection areas for veterans, and to just help them activate and create a synergy. They anticipate that hopefully some veterans may live in the facility, and we just think it will be a nice way to ensure that there's a synergy along that corridor.
Thank you.
So, but by way of just administrative interactions here, so do you want to entertain questions as we go along, or do you want to sort of like go through a section and then we can have questions on that particular section?
I think if we go section by section, that would be more efficient. So yeah,
Okay.
I was just, that's what we wanted to share as far as the concept. I was going to turn it over to Terry Schumann to do the engineering. So if there's questions on what we've just discussed, now would be a good time.
I have a couple, but I'll let any other commissioners go first if they have questions.
There's a question for the American Legion. How many parking spaces do you have on that property?
Currently, they're not, what I want to say, striped, so that was roughly.
We figured there are about 137 parking spaces on that site. Actually, 140, Bob.
But it's on the back.
Yeah, so the question I had was, given this is a mixed plan unit development, so that it's sort of getting at what I think Bob was going to get at too, is that there's some fungibility between what happens in these two parcels. So specifically around parking, the idea of doing these in that way lets us do some trade-offs here and there. Is that the correct way to look at that?
Well, let's see. I'd like to hear more about what the design is and what they're, what's going on over.
Right, but I just wanted to ask that question, that if it's done, if this is all being done as a plan unit development, that sort of opens the door for us to make comments on, that how each affects the other kind of thing. Is that so? Just asking that, is that the correct way to look at this?
Well, are you saying that the parking is shared between the two uses?
Well, I'm anticipating that's going to come up, but given that these two are really happening under the same, same application,
Right.
that seems to me fair game to make that sort of a.
Well, we've shown parking that basically believe meets what the need is going to be at the two locations, at the two uses.
Well, I mean, we can get into it when we get in. It's just more of a big picture question.
I anticipate that there'll be, coordination as far as, when there's an overflow for an event, or when the Legion is not active, that residents can park there too. We haven't worked out those details, but
okay. But I mean that's given this would be one application. Those kinds of things are possible, because in the past, when we've had two separate applications with properties right next to each other, we can't sort of do that kind of trade-off. So I just wanted to make that point
okay.
clear. The other question I had was, is this essentially being sort of funded through low income tax credits? Is that the mechanism, or?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, okay.
We received an award last year from the Maryland Department of Housing.
Mhm.
And are using tax credits as well as some other state funding for the capital cost.
How much was that?
How much was the tax credit reservation?
And how much was the capital grant?
The tax credit reservation, I believe, is around 1.5 million, and that equates to about $14 million in capital that's generated from selling those tax credits.
Okay, and what about, and you said you also got straight ahead grant money for.
Yeah, well, there's also loans from the state of Maryland.
And how much is that?
I think they're around 2 million. And then we have a commercial mortgage, I think for another $1.5 million. If you just give me a sec, I can confer with Matt about the sources outlined. I wasn't sure we were going to cover that.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah.
Those sources are correct. I would just note that the $2 million in applied for state loan funds are not guaranteed at this point. It's a pending application.
And pending our approval?
Not pending your approval, pending the state's approval.
And they're not going to approve it unless we approve it.
No, the two approvals are not connected. They issued a request for applications earlier this summer, and they're reviewing applications from funders from across the state currently.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks. I think it's just helpful for us to understand, by way of background, how these things come about, because clearly they're not market rates, so it's not for profit. So it's just nice to know.
Who is Annapolis Realty Partners?
They're the sellers.
Who are they?
Of the property. Who are the individuals?
Well, who do they? Are there? It's an LLC. Are they? Yeah. Who's the principal? The principal behind Annapolis Realty Partners?
Or it's Kevin Setzer.
Well, the Annapolis Realty Partners is a limited liability company. It has a number of partners. I think the managing partner is Hamilton Cheney.
Because I heard a rumor that Hogan companies were involved.
Hogan is involved as a broker. I believe they're a partner, but that's just speculation on my part. I've never seen the list of members of that entity. It's just not information that has been provided or requested.
Okay. Okay. All right.
Okay. Anybody else have questions sort of on the overview? Okay, thanks. Yeah, why don't we jump into the meat of the issue then?
Yes, Terry.
Yeah, thanks.
Good evening. So I'll run through these plans that we presented to you guys with the packets from last week. This is just an overall plan. You can see Forest Drive on the top of the page. Hilltop is coming in. That's right at the intersection. Obviously, Newtown Drive is to the west, and then you have the forested areas with the pending Villages project to the east, and Riders Glen townhomes to the south. As I said before, as we indicated before, there's several parcels. The Legion is in the middle. There is as we call the garden parcel, or we call it also parcel B, is the wooded tract between Newtown Drive and the Legion. So that tract plus the three other tracts make up the applicant's property. And in total with the Legion, we're 5.7 acres. Most of our, I'll get on to the next page. So the next page is our forest stand delineation. It's just important just to note that there's very little forest on at least the Willows portion of the property. There's a small little forest down by Riders Glen, less than 1/10 of an acre, and the remaining forest is over on the what we call the garden parcel and a portion of Legion property. The heavy circles, shaded circles, those are specimen trees. That were identified, and there are some other specimen trees in the neighborhood off the site, or trees that weren't specimen but significant trees. And Bob, I indicated before 140 spaces. The 140 is the total spaces for the project. Actually, 67 spaces are what's on the Legion property. So I stand corrected.
So on the which property?
The Legion property. So what we did here is it's not, you see from the aerial before, it's not really striped, but if we striped legal city parking spaces, we'd get 67 is what we came up with.
And then how many are on the proposed development property?
I'll show you in a minute, but we have
Okay,
70 parking spaces on there.
70.
Correct. So one of the plans we had in here was just the zoning information, parking calcs, and I just thought it was useful to give you that. I don't think we need to get into that. I'll get into that when we get into the site plan. So this is our proposed plan, and as indicated before, we're proposing 58 units comprised in three large buildings on the site. The access points, and Judy will get more on the architecture part of that, but they're all inward toward the parking areas. We do show, we did coordinate with the Providence, at least the sections of the road that were at the conditions of their approval. And we continued that Skipper's Lane from Newtown Drive to the limits of the property, and then ultimately, if that project goes forward, it'll extend it further.
Who's paying for the construction of this portion of Skipper's Lane?
So our understanding is,
Which portion?
well, from Newtown 20 from the Newtown Drive to the limit of the Legion property
Ingram.
is
Willows, the Willow.
well, no, this portion of the road is going to be paid for by the city.
Go ahead, David.
Well, the portion of Skipper's Lane that runs across the American Legion property is being paid for by the city of Annapolis. The portion that's on the Willows property is being paid for by the Willows.
So the city is paying for a portion of the street on this planned development?
For the portion that runs across the American Legion property.
The agreement is consistent with what was the community expectation in Providence Point, whereby Providence Point was to front the funds for acquisition of the right-of-way behind the Legion property and deed it to the city. And the city was to step up and pay for the construction of the road from Newtown Drive to the Legion Willows property line. The Willows would be responsible for deeding over to the city the right-of-way on the portions of the property it's acquiring and constructing the road across its development site from the Legion to the Providence Point property line.
So continuing on, this site will be served by public water and sewer, all coming from Skipper's Lane, water extended, sewer extended to serve these buildings. Also providing a connection for the Legion as well. The stormwater will be provided for the new development. We have a series of microbiorotentions around the site that will treat the runoff. We also have some permeable pavement that we're providing in areas where we found some good soils for permeability. We also have treatment of the Skipper's Lane through bioretentions and some underground systems in the road.
Mr. Schuman, as long as we're on the subject of water, where does the property, what's the grade of the property? Is it downhill towards Forest Drive or downhill towards Skipper's Lane?
It actually, a good portion of it is going to come down to to Newtown Drive down in this corner. But there is a portion of the site up top here that does go out toward Forest Drive.
Okay.
It's split. It's kind of split.
Okay.
But there's pretty limited grade change throughout most of the property.
Yeah,
But, yeah.
it's pretty, I mean, all our finished floors are very, very similar. Yes, correct. This is just our grading plan. This is the area that Tara mentioned about the gardens area for the Legion for healing experience with the disabled vets and their families.
So the applicant is Annapolis Realty Partners is seeding, giving that land to the American Legion.
What?
That, they're the seller of the property to the Willows project, and the Willows is making that land available to the Legion through either a deed or a long-term lease. We haven't specified that, but the Legion will control it. And their long-term plans include, some fencing and cleanup over there and some lighting in addition to the garden area.
So it's either by deed or long-term lease, and you haven't decided that yet?
We haven't finalized that, but we have an agreement that they will control the garden parcel.
Okay.
I failed to mention too that we do have a playground up in this area for the community itself, consisting of some garden plots and playground equipment. I think Judy will probably get into that a little bit more too. Just moving on, I just wanted to, in coordination with Provident Point, the villages, this was the Skipper's Lane extension. So we worked out the same geometry that was being applied to their project: bike lanes on both sides, drive aisles, sidewalks and green area for street trees. We do show some parking on the one side, but no parking anywhere else along that road. And Bob, just going back up and talking to you about the parking. So I'm going to go back up to the site plan. So clean up in a second. So we, if we follow the code requirement for parking for the multifamily dwellings, it's 1.5 spaces per unit, which would be a total of 93 parking spaces required. Ingerman did some evaluation on a series of multifamily dwellings that they have, and they showed a reduction in the parking requirement on their other sites. So we will be asking for an alternative parking requirement to go to 1.2 parking spaces per unit. And that's where our 70 spaces on site come from. And it does not include any parking out in the Skipper's Lane. And partly the reduction in the parking spaces allows for some additional green area to keep the parking in front of the buildings away from Forest Drive. And I think the city was pushing for some reduction in parking as well. So we're trying to comply with this application. Moving on, again, our Skipper's Lane, just extension, just to have a coordination with the other Skipper Lane extensions elsewhere along this corridor will be done. This is just the profile, and we're coordinating that with Villages project. From a forest conservation standpoint, this will clear up in a second, sorry. This, what we wanted to show here, we're the only forest that's really being cleared is the existing forest on Skipper's Lane for the extension. And there's not much other location for that extension of the road. So there is some forest clearing there. When we run through the city requirements for forest conservation, we have a mitigation requirement, which we are meeting with street trees along Forest Drive and along Skipper's Lane. So we will meet our forest conservation requirements for this site with our street trees. And what we don't show here too is we have a landscape plan that will meet the requirements of landscaping. We worked a little bit with the city, increasing our island widths to accommodate some of the landscape trees that we'll have in the parking areas. And again, working with the city, we thought it would be best to reduce that parking requirement and get some green area back on the project. These are just some computations for the site. With that said, I'll turn it over to Judy unless there's any questions.
Would this be a good time to sort of talk about the general layout, or are you going to go into some more
Yeah,
detail
so.
on that, or?
No, I think so, yes.
Yeah, so Mr. Smith sent around a few comments towards the end of the day today about discussions that have happened about proximity of this building 3 to Forest Drive, and sort of the general layout. But in general, one of the things, a couple of things struck me in the layout is, the first one immediately was the green area with the playground and the garden plots and stuff. To me, just seems really inadequate for this space, in the sense that it just, it seems like it's going to be pretty crowded if you've got 50 plus units there. Just doesn't seem like a lot of space. And on top of that, what's sort of central to this, if you can think of the middle of the property as a courtyard, is basically, the focal point to me is the parking lot, which, it's not really very nice. I would have much rather had, as Mr. Smith mentioned in his email today, sort of a central focus being, public green space. So when if people whose windows and porches face the center, they'd be looking out over a playground and not over a parking lot. So, I don't know how you might rearrange that to get the amount of parking you want, plus have the courtyard, the green space be a central feature. But that to me would make a much nicer experience. And if you don't want the building up next to Porches Drive because it could be loud, that why not put parking there? Because cars don't care if it's close to Forest Drive. So anyway, I would probably think about how to rearrange that to have more centralized green space and not make the prominent central feature asphalt parking lot. If anybody else has comments similar to that. But that's just sort of what struck me as immediately when I looked at this.
Would you want to live there, Alex?
Not overlooking a parking lot, no.
I'm with you.
Well, I'm catching the drift here from my colleagues. We have to remember this is a work session. And
yeah,
the purpose
exactly.
of a work session is to gauge, to put things before us informally, so to speak, and to gauge what our reactions are to things. I'm a little bit taken aback by the amount of engineering that's been done, because that is not in the spirit of work sessions. So hopefully the applicant doesn't take this, our comments as don't take them badly and don't cry over your beer. But I agree with Alex. This building, which is right up against Forest Drive, it looks to me about 20 to 25 feet of a little bit of buffer. That's nothing from Forest Drive. And I agree with Alex that what you've got is a parking lot as the central focus of this supposed community. And parking lots don't create community. They only create trash. So it would seem to me that if you begin looking at rearranging the building somewhat, that you can come up with a design which gets you what you want, but also creates a much better development. And I don't want to feel at all pressured to come up with any kind of short-term solution here when we have to live with this thing long-term, and lots of people will have to live with it long-term. So if the building C, I think that's called, were in fact brought in to front onto whatever the village green is, and building B was also perhaps moved up a little bit and also brought to front in on the village green, and the parking was placed to the east. And the access road may be to the east, running right along the boundary line with the villages. And your parking were placed up in the corner and along Forest Drive. And then you put in maybe a 4 or 6 foot wall to sort of, in terms of the view as you come down Hilltop Lane, and you're not looking at a parking lot, but you're looking at a wall with the street trees on the outside of it. Then you begin to have a better experience, not only for the people who live there, but for everybody who pass, the thousands of people who pass it every day. And by doing so, you may be able to increase actually the size of the village green there. And building A, the little one at the bottom, could probably be moved even a bit closer to Skipper's Lane, which is much more amenable to a more urbanized kind of a street setting. And certainly doesn't have the impact of traffic on Forest Drive. So it could, Skipper's Lane will be a good bit quieter than Forest Drive. So it could stand being closer to Skipper's Lane. If you did that, all 3 buildings would then front onto the village green, and the parking would be on the outside. And your access road would be on the outside. Now, the other thing that came up with Alex once, also sort of, sort of tossed out and posed is, I look at this planned unit development of these combined properties, and I'm seeing many parking spaces over at the American Legion. And I'm seeing a very tight development where the housing is, and is dominated by parking. And so the beauty of a planned development is that you can begin to combine all sorts of aspects of things, and you can do things creatively. So I think that it behooves the applicants to look at what parts of the American Legion parking lot can be actually used on a daily basis, and combined into the plan as a whole, rather than just saying, oh, well, we're going to cooperate. I don't buy that in the future. I think it needs to be on paper. It needs to be specified. And I think you need to come to agreements. But I see, in terms of our abilities to look at this as a planned development of 2 combined properties, I see lots and lots of duplicated parking. And I also see that potentially there is more recreational facilities that could be created through the combination of the properties. So that's kind of where I'm getting. I don't think that our experience with what's the name of the development that's on the other side of the Safeway? What's it called? Oxford Landing?
Yeah.
Yes.
On the other side of Bywater. Yeah.
Yes. And our experience with that is that their parking is really a problem. It's a workforce housing development. And what you have is, you have people driving home their employers' trucks or their cars. They have a teenager who's, working and going to the community college, and that person has a car. And the next thing you know, you have 3 or 4 cars per unit. And so the problem with parking and simply mobility through that place is what's holding up Rocky Gorge. Now, I don't want to create the same problem here. That's why I think looking seriously at all of the wonderful ways and creative ways that you can use this combined property for the benefit of both of the owners of the American Legion and for this particular developer applicant. Which is a long-winded way of saying you really need to look at shared parking and coming into a very firm agreement and it works to the benefit of both.
Yeah, now I see Mr. LaPlace has his hand up, but before we go to him, so I just want to riff off one of the comments Bob made about addressing Skipper's Lane. And so the way this is laid out to me, it's sort of, the buildings are sort of turning their shoulder to Skipper's Lane, and Skipper's Lane really is going to be a low speed city street. And I would really like to see it be there are 6-foot sidewalks is laid out here, which is fantastic. Some of the largest sidewalks that will be in the city, plus a nice buffer before you get to the street. And so, because you're investing a lot of energy and resources into making a really nice sidewalk scape, I would think you'd want to situate these buildings so that they would, it would help make a little street life, by people coming out of their doors into this, onto the street to walk down to stuff, to the CVS or whatever, versus sort of like having it all inward facing, especially to the parking lot. That sort of just reeks of a kind of a suburban enclave development, which this is not what we want here. So anyway, that's one additional comment I have. So Michael, go ahead. You have your hand up, waiting patiently.
Oh, thank you, Chair. Just a couple quick comments. I hear what everyone's saying. It's not optimum to have the center of the site to be parking, and staff did work preliminarily to make some of the tree islands bigger, but maybe that green open space could be more centrally located. One major point I wanted to make is that building that's closest to Forest. I don't think you want to have parking along Forest. The city's vision for Forest Drive is for it to become more of a boulevard and more of a city street, more of a people place, and not just a high-speed car route. So, we're trying to discourage front yard parking and strip developments that look like strip development where you just see parking from the street. So I think we need to be sensitive to that. I don't think it would be a benefit to have parking facing Forest, but maybe some of the buildings could be shifted around. Maybe that green space could be more centrally located. And I think Mr. Waldman's idea about, shared parking should always be, it may really help in this situation and should always be considered. So those were just some of my thoughts. Thanks.
With respect to Forest Drive, there are 7 or 8 lanes there. And I don't see that ever becoming less than that. Is that ever going to be a slow speed?
Well, is that really what you want it to be in the future, though?
No, it's not. But let's be realistic here.
This is the Planning Commission. We're planning for the future. We have to have a vision.
You really think we can do a road?
I'm just saying. I don't know if we want to encourage front yard parking facing very public streets. Actually, most of the city inhabitants or people that pass through Annapolis are going to experience this site from Forest. Do you really want them to be looking at parking, surface?
No,
parking?
your point's well taken, but I'm coming at it slightly more pragmatically, but peace.
One of the points though, Mr. Laplace, Mike, is that a knee wall or a shoulder wall that simply hides the level of the cars, and over that, through the trees, over that wall, then you would begin to see, the residential buildings. And it's not the longest, widest property here, so that you wouldn't be seeing parked cars. You'd be seeing a wall, which may end up having a mural or graffiti, but it wouldn't be parked cars. And I'm concerned about the people living so close to Forest Drive.
Well, I think the assumption here sounds to me like everybody thinks Forest Drive is going to pretty much stay the way it is. And I think we have to both be in the present, but also be in the future and help shape the future. I think, as you all know, trees and buildings close to the street actually slow traffic. It gives a perception of a street that's more for more things than just cars. So just something to think about. I'd hate to see us actually asking a developer to put parking in the front yard of a busy street, highly visible. That's all I wanted to share.
Okay. Well, we should think about ways to screen it.
A few things about how we got here was when we first approached the city, we thought we'd have a driveway up. We actually have a driveway on Forest Drive, but they brought up the concept of using Skipper's Lane. So so that took away that access there. And then we lost the land that's being used for Skipper's Lane, which I understand is important. So that we dealt with a few constraints that kind of drove the layout that you're looking at. As far as, inward looking, in general, we like it that when neighbors come out of their buildings, they look at other neighbors and other front doors. It's not look at cars going by on the street. I think you could argue both sides of a inward looking community versus a community that's lined up along a street. The other thing is we've held 2 community meetings at the American Legion with this design. This design's been around for a while. It's a little, and I don't disagree with the goals you described, but I don't know that we kind of violate all them. But it's just that we've been through a kind of a lengthy process here. We've had a sign on the property. We've had a website. We've just the only communication we get is for people that want to know when they can move in. So I heard you said you didn't want to move here, but we've documented a significant amount of demand from the people. The more the comments we get have to do with when is it going to be open and when can I move in, and I don't want to miss out. So I mean, we can I don't know, that's a new concept with the Legion about them, giving up parking in some kind of a formal fashion. We always thought it would be kind of a more of an informal, but we can not oppose to exploring that. I'm not making any promises, but I just don't know with sitting here right now with these kind of major changes. I think Forest Drive, we were told to kind of preserve the frontage there, so it had more pleasing appearance, albeit as cars are going by at 45 miles an hour. We do have the bike lane, and we thought where it intersects Hillside Drive was an opportunity for some kind of outdoor art, doing something that that the Legion would commission around with some kind of veteran theme. But we haven't gotten that far. But we thought that would be a nice kind of break between the street and our property, and that is about 40 feet, I think, isn't it, Terry? That
40 feet from the curb to the building. Yes.
Yeah. So we just didn't come up with this arbitrarily. It's been developed through a process and shown to the community, and we've shown it to staff as well, going back to almost 2 years now. So we can look at addressing some of your comments. I just don't know about Terry moving the road to the east. Yeah. And
well, you may have been around, you may have been thinking about this for I don't know how long, but this is the first time we've seen anything.
Sure.
Okay. And you could have come 6 months ago with sketches, and we might not be where we are today, because I can hear the frustration in your voice, and I'm not diminishing it or demeaning it, but you asked for our comments, okay? And if ultimately it's up to us to approve or not approve this.
Well, I'm just going to speak for a second. Bob, I absolutely agree with you.
Who's speaking?
My name's Tara Stout. I live locally, and so I follow a lot of the planning commission meetings. There's been an active engagement with the city on this project, and we have been wondering when we could get to planning commission, but the rules in the city code are very clear that an applicant or anyone associated with the project is precluded from contacting planning commission. So it's not our decision when you guys are looped into the process. And I wholeheartedly agree with you. It would have been great to have it happen sooner. And we've been begging for this day, and we're happy to be finally here. But it's unfortunate that things get this far down the pike. And
they are down the pike, and here's where we are. And you've asked for what our observations are, and you're getting them.
Yeah, I guess we heard your comments. We still have more presentation that's not related to the site layout.
Sure.
Yeah, let's move on then.
Mr. Chairman, while we're here, may I chime in?
Sure. Yeah.
So I hear the applicant, and they have had several community meetings, but we have made comments very similar to yours to the applicant well over a year ago. So I'm still surprised that Building C hasn't been pushed back from Forest Drive at this point. Just wanted to make that clear, that staff has been unhappy with the layout since the beginning.
So if building C comes down, then that means there's parking on Forest Drive. The parking lot fronting on Forest Drive.
Well, what kind of screening can you come up with?
I don't know. So let's let Judy. Do you have anything? Did you have something?
No,
As you move forward, I suppose you're going to go into architecture a little bit. One of the things that interests me is what is on with the current layout, what is on the face of the buildings which face Skipper's Lane. So when you do go through that, can you point out to me, because I can't quite figure it out from your elevations.
Yeah, that will let Judy Miller talk about how we got to where we are with the architecture and the site.
No.
site study.
Okay.
You all see the site study? See that? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So just to give you a little background on this, we put this together in response to a letter we did receive from the city.
Yeah.
Always get it mixed up, the town, the city, regarding how we came to where we were. We did an analysis of the adjacent areas per the comprehensive plan, which states that you need to find and be in context with the areas that are adjacent and within the proximity of your property. It doesn't state exactly how much. This was our judgment on what we felt that was meant by that. So we did a mile around. You can see in this diagram here, the little center part is the site. You can see in context to the area, it's small. I'm not going to read you all the stuff on the written context. But if you look at the diagram on the right with the red, yes, thank you. You can see that it's this one little undeveloped area, so it's infill. And go to the next page. Again, here is based on, we did a diagram showing the different types of uses, residential, commercial, institutional, and the project site. And as you can see, there's a lot of residential around here. Obviously, there is some commercial and mixed use, but we know we didn't put it on this diagram because it wasn't an existing development, but the Providence Point, that's that big green area to the bottom, which is also residential. The next slide. Okay. Here are the adjacent neighborhoods. I know it's not what anybody thinks that we should be doing per se, but the idea is in context, these are sloped roofs. They have balconies. It's traditional architecture. There's parking in the front, and there's brick and siding. Next slide. And here's another one. Both 2 and 3 stories. So you can see most of these are inward facing. And one of the reasons that we are inward facing is because the scale of our site, setbacks and other requirements. So we're mimicking the adjacent areas as well. Next slide. Here's some additional townhouses also in the area. You can see from the other context map that this is adjacent to the site. Very traditional architecture, pitched roofs, double hung windows, and colonial trim. Next slide. And more of the same. There's some architecture. I know Village Greens has been something that's been brought up that It's the board is turning on. The board is turning on. I forget you, Tom. I forget the name of the board that you work
Department
on.
of Planning and Zoning.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
So, well, never mind. So this was one of the projects that you had particularly kind of sent us to look was the, go up a little bit, Terry. Up, no, so I can see, yeah. The Village Green Townhomes there. So we tried to, we looked at that, pitch roofs again, trim, bay windows. Go to the next slide. And then, we had looked at the area for the type of roads, and Forest Drive, yes, is a very heavily traveled 4 and 5 lane road, depending on where you are in the area of Forest Drive. Our property does front it. We were asked many moons ago to not have access off of Forest, that we were going to have a drive off the Skippers, whether it be private or public. At that point, we weren't aware, but we went that way. Next slide. Here's some views from the different, from Hilltop and can't quite see Forest Drive. So you can see our site, the block of our site as you're coming down the road. And our building is what you're going to see, not parking. Because again, we thought that was what you didn't want, was parking on the road. Next slide. And then here's the illustrated plan, which basically shows the buildings, the green space, the parking, stormwater management, and the adjacent Legion with, the green areas on parcel B. As you can see down on the bottom right, there's the Providence Point that we added that in after one of our conversations with you guys about trying to deal with, how it fits in context with that. So
Can I ask a quick question on this drawing here? Up in the upper right, in this version it shows parking. The other version shows
right
like a stormwater pond. Which is the more current one?
So we addressed one of the requests from Tom that asked us to remove some of the parking and increase some of the green spaces, which Terry has done. He made islands larger, took that parking out. After we did a study of Ingerman's other properties, since they manage so many properties, they did an analysis of buildings with a similar type of units and similar rent scale, what they needed for parking. So we felt comfortable in reducing the parking. And I think that Terry did say that this was done, this context study was done before the last plans that Terry put up on the screen.
Yeah, so my thought was that having that parking, having two separate pieces of green space is less useful than being able to combine them. That's one of the things that jumped out to me. So like instead of having the parking right above the green playground, you put it over on the right, and the parking right above there, instead of being a sort of stormwater pond on the right, that could be parking. And this, you could almost double the size of the playground area, as an example.
I wouldn't want to put the playground area right on Forest Drive.
No, it's the other way around. So basically taking that green that says playground, and extending it up into the parking there, and keep the parking that's up that way.
So, and I don't mean to be disrespectful, but we keep on going back and forth with what people want. And it wasn't that I believe that you didn't want that parking up there. So I just am confused as to when we have so many opposing comments, how do we satisfy any?
That's a good question.
And we that playground's typical for what we would put in a this size development, and we have a good experience with them. I don't know how to document that. We could videotape them, but I probably can't do that. But no, that's and there is indoor recreation space too that supplements that. But that's our typical size playground. It's usually used by kids that are like pre-K age.
Right.
And it's fenced and it's, there's seating and their parents can be comfortable with them running around.
Well, because the unit mix is 1, 2s, and 3s, so obviously every unit isn't going to be occupied by families with children.
Right. No, we get a lot of seniors that want the ground floor units because they're all handicap accessible and they're affordable.
Okay, no, you're fine, you're fine. I just had to mention that, and again, it's an infill site that has a lot of restrictions as to setbacks off the sides, the density, so many components that it is really difficult to address all of them, make everybody happy. So keep going and I'll show you some of the things that we did. So this is what it looks like in a rendering. This is the parking lot view based on what that illustrative plan that you were just looking at with the parking as is. The islands are not larger, the parking's not reduced. And it's in essence, the front of the building where you come in the doors. The only difference between the front and the back is you don't have the doors in the back. That's where you get your 3 bedrooms and bridge that space. But this is the same type of architecture you see in the adjacent neighborhoods. It's pitched roofs, it's double hung windows, it's trim, it's porches.
What are the depths of the porches, out of curiosity? That was another question I had.
Hang on a second, but on the bottom, I'm sorry, left, I have to check left and right. So on the left-hand side of the drawing, that porch and that side facade faces Skipper's Lane.
Okay, good.
Okay, and you can see more when we get to some other drawings.
Yes, how big
What's there.
a porch is.
How big a porch?
You
It
said the
depends.
depth.
Yeah, what are the depths? Like, can you actually get a chair there?
Oh, yeah,
Not have your feet hanging over the railing?
absolutely. They're 5 or 6 feet.
Okay.
They're not just French balconies. They're actual balconies that you can go out on and stand.
But could you get a chair out there?
You can get a chair and a table out there.
Okay.
Absolutely. And all of the units have that outside space, which I think is very nice to have.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, I do a lot of affordable housing, and I will tell you that many of my developers don't want that because they don't want to have to deal with putting bikes out there and that kind of stuff. So people don't get the outside space, and it doesn't make for as nice of a living situation as it can be. So that's just, an illustrative rendering that we did for our tax credit application. Can you go to the next slide? And here's just 2D colored renderings. As you can see, the front and the rear are similar. There's no door in the middle of the back. That's on the bottom left-hand side. They're the patios and the balconies for the units. And then on the side elevation, that is what faces Skipper's Lane and also faces the other building. Because with this site being more linear than square, you had to lay the buildings in that direction to be able to park them, hit the density, make this project be real, that it is actually buildable and affordable, and meet all the criteria that's also required for the tax credit application. It is it's a misnomer when people think of affordable housing, they think, oh, it's cheap. This is not cheap. They have very high standards. These buildings have to be designed to higher energy standards. We're doing LEED Gold here. We have a lot of things that in market rate, I don't even get that opportunity for. So I love doing affordable housing because we do get to do these nicer projects, but we have to be cognizant of what things cost and truly trying to use the resources that are given to make the most for as many people as you can. And when I look at this, I don't think this is unattractive. I don't think that this is out of context. It's not urban, because when we were doing this, we didn't feel like we were in the center of the city. to warrant flat roofs and temporary looks. We really felt, to be in context, to align with the comprehensive plan, that we needed it more traditional.
This is titled as Building 1, but the plans talk about A, B, and C. Which building is this?
That building is, hold on, please.
11.
No,
Is this A?
hang on a second. Yes,
This
type
is
1,
A.
building A, because it says type 1 and building A, yes.
Okay. Could you show building C?
I don't know if you did building C. Let's scroll through.
Well, you have 3 buildings.
Yeah, here we go. Building 2, which is,
The big one.
yes, the largest one. Yes. The one that's directly opposite of A and type 1,
Right, not along Forest Drive.
not along First Drive. Yes.
Yeah, and this in building 3 is, yeah, there you go.
Right.
Okay, and when you say the front and the rear, which faces which way?
So the front of building B faces the parking lot.
Okay, so this is what people would see from Forest Drive. This is the residence that.
No, yeah, the rear.
You're right, the rear of the building, and this is what. This is what going on.
I'm
Stay
gonna get
there.
a second, stop right there. Okay, so can I drive the mouse? I'm gonna come over here. Sorry. All righty, so what we were just looking at, the front, this is the building right here, building B, right here, okay? So this is the front that faces the parking lot. The back, right here, faces this other adjacent property. The only face that hits Forest Drive is building 3, which is
That's the last one. Yeah.
this one right here. And then we've actually modified it so these are French balconies on this elevation because we are concerned about noise. So we modified that to be French balconies, but it's not an unattractive elevation. I don't think any of these are unattractive.
I don't think anybody said they were unattractive. I think they look great.
Well, we were told that they were unattractive. Yes,
Oh.
They have said that. But this right here is the front of, let me get back to that plan so you can see. I'm sorry, I'm not used to his mouse. This right here is the front of building 1 that we were looking at right here, which in perspective. And then this is it 2D, just with colored and people in parts. Okay. And quite honestly, this is the entry of the building. So you want people to have, we talk about security, we talk about accessibility. You want people to be able to access their units without having to walk a tremendous amount, because we are required, to have this entire level on all 3 buildings to be accessible per fair housing. So we have to think about that too. And I get, we just have so many constraints. It's very difficult to make everyone happy. But, with regards to architecture, there's brick, there's double hung windows, there's shingle hung windows, there's trim, there's nice railing and porches and gables and windows and shingled siding and lap siding. I mean, I think it's a nice blend of elements that are traditional in nature and very familiar to people, that they can think of their homes. And that's our goal here, is to make this home for 58 families.
Well, that's our goal too.
Okay. I'm not sure, because I know you had a question about what faces. I don't remember how many more. I think that's the last slide there. So
That's the side which faces Forest Drive.
this is
The rear is what faces Forest Drive. And that's what people are saying we should be applauding and want to see more of.
I
Anyway, I understand. And also the people right along Forest Drive, these are like garden on the first floor. They're like looking right out on all of that traffic.
It's 40 feet.
It's 40 feet and there is landscaping there.
From the curb to the building?
Yes, 40 feet.
Yeah, okay.
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 So in garden apartments, you don't typically have just one side that people look out on. They are typically a garden apartment has a stair in the middle and 4 units on each floor. So at some point, somebody's going to look out on a parking lot or somebody's going to look out on a road because you have to get to the building. Is there?
Was there any more?
I don't know. You want to go to discussions?
Sure.
Okay.
Well, this is.
Okay. It's
Okay.
okay. So based on our meeting with Tom in his office, I don't know, a month ago. Is it a month ago?
Yeah.
About a month ago. One of the things that they had mentioned, they didn't think it was speaking to them in the context of broader Annapolis, and that they wanted it to mimic more of what they saw at Village Green. So I said, all right, let me look and see what I can do. So this was our elevations. These were the 2D elevations. I took some trace paper and I overlaid it. And I said, okay, well, what can I do to change massing? So basically—
Are you showing those yet, or we don't see it yet?
Hold on, I'm sorry. It's not. He's got— there's multiple screens that he's up there sharing. Go to that one. Can you see it now? You see yellow?
Yeah,
Okay.
now we see it.
No, I'm sorry. So I'll start back at the beginning. This is basically what we had. This is the previous draft elevations in color and 2D, just CAD drawings. Nothing special. If I showed everybody CAD drawings, nobody would like anything because they're just ugly. So here was when we took some trace paper, overlaid it. What can we do to address the massing to reflect what Tom was requesting as to mimic Village Green and the massing there. Now, Village Green is townhouses. We're not townhouses, so it's not easy to do. But what we did is we changed some roof lines, kept the footprint pretty much the same, but changed some roof lines. The only thing I have that gives me pause on this is this building. It works nicely on because it's a smaller building, and we can say, all right, here's our entry. And this makes a lot of sense. And we still have our sides because we have our community space here. This is the back. This is, facing the Legion on that side. But when I go to the other building, so here, for example, this is the shorter building. So building C, which is on Forest Drive. Okay. Again, this is just the front. I didn't sketch over the back. This is the old back before we changed to French balconies. So the massing's nice. It has some nice roof play, but my concern with this is the entries. I may be confusing people. Where do I enter? Because this isn't 5 townhouses. This is 2 linked buildings. Here's my entry. Here's my entry. I think the massing is great, but I'm confusing people. And it gets tight trying to do the ornamental windows here, and it just didn't look right. But that's what we came up with to try to address making it more townhouse scale. And this was our original rendering. And as you can see here, because we have these ornamental windows, this kind of draws you to this is the entry. when I break down my massing, it just doesn't fit. That's where that is. If I break down the massing into 5 chunks, that's where that's what you get. But again, we put some dormers on it and threw some extra gables in. We threw the whole bag of traditional architecture at it. And then the next building, the longer one, as you can see, I didn't sketch quite as much. The idea is the same, that you have these masses, you have this central piece, you have this interior piece, you have this end piece, you have these bookends. So you have this undulating roof line, which again, looks nice. It would really look nice if these were, cluster townhouses or something, or back-to-back townhouses. But again, I'm just a little concerned about confusing people where the entry is to these. So that's what we came up with. I do have 2D of this. I don't know if you want to look at that or if you have some questions.
So when people look for an entrance, they're walking, aren't they?
I hope. Well, no, I mean, you've got Amazon, you have.
Okay, but there's an entrance and there are porticos over each entrance?
Well, there's also porches that we've added. I mean, it's just the hierarchy bothers me.
Oh, okay, but you're talking about the roof lines and so forth, right?
No, I'm talking about when I break this mass down, okay? There isn't a hierarchy of the same that you have in something like this. You say, okay, I know that this is the entry. I'm clear that this is the entry because I don't have a lot of undulations in the front facade and I don't have a lot of undulations in the roof. So it doesn't lend itself to being individual buildings.
Okay, you want my layman's appraisal of this is the entryway is easy to find, it's easy to see, it's very obvious. You'll make it obvious with a portico and so forth and so on. And the roof line, though, people do see from a distance, and it's a mighty long and unbroken roof line. And so therefore, some sort of false gable or dormers in the central section would in fact make it, break it up and make it more interesting, because variety is the spice of life. And I don't think anybody would be confused that the entrance is in the middle because of the roof line, because you added a gable and a couple of dormers in the roof line. I don't think anybody.
This isn't the problem.
What's the problem?
I could plop these on here without any problem. My
Okay.
problem is because of the mass, and this is the problem with just doing these sketches and not modeling it, but this is a mass. This is a mass. This is a mass, this is a mass, this is a mass, okay?
I know in our guidelines, they talk about breaking these masses up, and you're basically trying to make what's ostensibly an apartment building look like a set of townhouses. And
well, I think
it's a little bit of, and I guess I kind of agree with you, is that it's a little bit like, trying to make something into something that it's not. And it sort of comes off awkwardly. I'm agreeing with you that I think trying to sort of shoehorn this into that design pattern is a little bit awkward.
But I will tell you, on the first one, the smaller of the buildings, I don't feel that way because of the smaller mass of it.
Right. Yeah.
And the larger buildings.
I'm catching you on this.
Okay.
Sure.
On the larger buildings, that's my concern. But I mean, this was our attempt at trying to address the planning board's concerns about it not meeting what their idea was of Annapolis in the broader sense.
Not the board, the staff.
The staff, that's
And staff. Yeah.
staff, I'm sorry.
So just, by way of background here, for those of you who don't know us, is that, we all have slightly different perspectives. Some of us are more interested in architecture. Some are more interested in, how something functions versus how it looks. That's my particular view of the world. Is not so much about architecture. It's more function. And so anyway, you just have to sort of take all these perspectives and just as they are.
Well, I
But
mean,
we're not all going to have the same view between this
would.
commission and staff. And so that's
Yeah.
the nature of the beast.
it is, and I understand that, and that is what we do. We take and try to pull together, not ignore any one person's concerns or comments. It's how we got to where we are. We have addressed multiple concerns. It just seems like they diverge significantly from each time we meet, and it makes it difficult to ever get to a point where we're going to feel like we can, move on to the next step. And I know that you said, and I apologize if this is, a problem, but we weren't able to meet with you. And I don't know the process. I do buildings. I don't do site planning. But we took it this far because we did think that we were going through the proper channels based on the feedback we were getting and the direction of this is the next step, this is the next step. So nobody was
Zoning and
the zoning, and nobody was trying
Well,
to.
you offered several times, did you, David, for Judy to go in and meet with the city?
Yeah.
Did,
And the
but
mayor.
what I'm saying is no one was deliberately not trying to bring this in front of you. So I'm just trying to drive that point home, that nobody was disregarding your opinion.
I don't think we took it that way. So
I hope not. I hope
Well,
not.
you mentioned your interest in how these function. I mean, I don't know if you caught it, but these are LEED gold buildings.
I'm sorry,
Lead gold.
oh yeah, I mean, when I say they function, I don't mean how the technical aspects of the construction functions. I mean, holistically, how they're laid out, how people use them, how they interact with the public, between the public and private realm. When I say function, that's what I'm referring to,
Okay.
for me, anyway.
And if there's anything else that you'd like to see, I can, try to walk you through. I don't think.
I think, my only issue architecturally was to make sure that if you're gonna have porches, that they're usable as extra
are.
spaces. So
They are. They're actually, because what I have to do is I have to be able to get a wheelchair out there and turn it around.
yeah, good.
Okay.
I mean, because I think having, really nice porches that people like to spend time on,
Mhm.
at least in not the 2 months that it's stinky hot here, but the rest of the time, it's, it's nice
Well-
to have eyes on the sort of public spaces as eyes on the street sort of thing.
And I was looking to see if I had any plan in here. I don't have it in this set, but they are 5 to 6 feet depending on which unit and where in the building. Which I think for garden apartments nowadays, that's generous. Most of the time I see them 3 to 4 feet.
Yeah, that's enough to stand on, but not much else. Yeah.
Right. So is there anything else that you'd like to?
Well, I think the point of that was to show we developed the plans, or you developed the plans to that level. We recently got feedback to change it to not so much the near, the close by context, but Annapolis broader.
Right.
Those sketches were prepared at the end of July, maybe 2 weeks ago. We didn't want to go, I'd rather honestly not change the architecture. I definitely don't want to change it and have to change it again. So we were trying to get some feedback in the spirit of a workshop of, is what you see before you consistent with kind of, your vision or the sketches, or is there some modification we can make to what Judy's rendered here?
Yeah.
If I can speak, and I only speak for myself. There are 2 points. One of them is in the long buildings is that you really may want to do something with the roof line and use that false gable in the center or dormers or something to break it up. It's a very long building. The other two, I think, function quite well with the gables and the middle entrance as they are. But secondly, you have, this building that faces sideways to Skipper Lane. 2 of them face sideways to Skipper Lane.
Right.
And especially the smaller one. I mean, you're showing a very secondary entrance, and we just had comments earlier about how we're trying to make a sort of, an urban boulevard feeling. Well, when you have the building, this building, one, I think it is, or A,
I don't know. where-
facing, that side that faces the
So this right here,
Skipper's Lane, yes. I think that either the building is flipped 90 degrees, or you have to do something more to make this into a much more inviting and kind of active side elevation. Okay, those are my two comments as you go forward.
so, okay,
Yeah, just across the street from us on Skipper's Lane is the back of Riders Glen's Townhouses. They don't front.
Well, we don't want to make the same mistakes twice.
Well,
Well, it's their backyard.
So-
That's the
so
problem.
here-
They're not gonna wanna have that activity in their backyard.
I'm saying this is a major development. And you want to make it inviting on the side as people pass all the way through on Skipper's Lane from all different kinds of neighborhoods to and fro. And to give the kind of cold shoulder, I think you need to come up with some pizzazz to make, if it stays in the same position that it's in, and especially if it gets closer to Skipper Lane. It really needs to be made into something more. You may have your management office there. You may have something, a bigger portico. You may make it into a porch that runs the entire length of that side of the building. I don't know. That's up to you. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, that's sort of this comment about function, and a lot of the criticism I have of a number of things that you showed that are existing, even things that are relatively new, like Enclave at Spa, that just completely turns its shoulder on Hilltop Lane, which, and it sort of focuses it all on its little street there, and it, I don't like that personally. That's just my view of the world. But I think to make Skipper's Lane to be a nice street that's not just something that people pass through, I think the comments that Bob made are well taken.
that's the elevation in the upper right corner
Right.
labeled side that would be
Right.
facing Skipper's Lane.
right.
Yeah.
And let me explain something too, because this is the front, right? If I put windows here, you want to talk about function, I now have a bedroom that has a double window and a single window in the same room, and you don't have a bed wall because you have a closet and you have an entry. So it's a gentle balance of how do we can't make all the sides look like fronts and make them functional. I can say disregard that and who gives a crap if you put your bed up against the window, but I do.
I don't know if we can look at making that look more inviting.
I mean,
Yeah, I mean, we
I
did
don't-
get, at our public hearing, I do know we got comments from some of the townhome owners. Obviously, they're not happy about Skipper Lane existing at all. They would prefer it not to be there. So putting more activity along Skipper Lane is probably not something that those townhome owners are gonna want to see. And that's the backyard.
What was that?
Yeah, I can totally see how that I would say that.
What was that? I didn't hear that.
We got a comment when we had our public hearing, one of the townhome owners mentioned how they're not happy with having Skipper's Lane because they don't want to have the traffic going behind their house. I mean, that's their backyard. So that's, I suspect that those townhome owners are not going to welcome having more activity going along Skipper's Lane.
Well, there's going to be the activity that there's going to be, and there's been a lot of work and thought about screening and fencing and so forth.
I mean,
We're talking about this new project.
Yeah, we had those comments during the hearings we had for Providence Point. We heard those same things. But that, the world isn't static.
So that's,
so
can we make that?
I mean, I
elevation more
can
inviting?
make
Yeah.
that elevation more inviting.
or some landscaping or some features.
On the larger building, if you'd like, I can address that refine on the larger building.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I mean, so that's there's no interiors. So, right? Yeah, so that's what we have for the architecture. We don't have the 1, 2, 3 bedroom unit layouts. Right, I know, right. You said, I'm not sure you care.
You guys don't even care to see that typically, do you?
We usually see it, but I think at this point it's neither here nor there. But
Yeah.
My sense.
But it does include, like I mentioned, a community room and a kitchen, a fitness center.
Mm-hmm.
The business incubator.
Indoor spaces, and then we've also made connections with economic development to have some business incubator activity. That's all changed over the last year as everything's gone remote. So I don't know. We'll offer those services, but it might just be more virtual than on site, based on what we're hearing. But we did want to. That was one of the things we were asked to consider is, assisting people with small business development, education. And so that's what the business incubator could function as. But we just, like I said, it's not sure how it's going to work with the partners we've identified because their approach is changing. But
We don't have to pull up the landscape plan, but it still has the old parking. But one thing I wanted to say is, when you're looking at the architect's facade elevations, you're not seeing them in context of the final landscape plan, because we have a lot of street trees and along Forest Drive that's going to break up the facade of that building. And we'll probably also be doing plantings in that area. The same along Skipper's Drive. These are not very developed plans. These are just kind of seeing what we could do with it. But I think once you see more final landscape plans, you'll see that the facades are also broken up by the trees and the landscape. It will not just be what you see in an architectural elevation. And I wanted to bring up one other thing. You talked about having one large green area, but we do have a mixed population here of elderly people and young families. And the way the layout is now with the 2 green spaces might actually be advantageous, because we could move like the community garden plots or something into 1 green area and have the children's active area in the other green area, so that those uses were not on top, not so close.
Right.
And I think
That's a fair comment. Sure.
I think that actually could work out really well with a development like this. And then you'd have the community garden plots up in that corner near Forest Drive, which would be an extension of the boulevard trees and planting in front of that facade along Forest Drive. So just some things to think about.
So question about the street trees that would be, so they would be between the extension of the shared use path and the buildings, and there are power lines right up close to the street, so you'd be able to still have these street, larger, eventually grown larger without getting sort of in the mess of the power lines. Or
there's 2 kinds. The ones that are ARAs are the narrower type that we generally use on places like West Street.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Power lines, and the QPs are bigger, wider trees. And since the plan that you see there has been done, we've actually added more street trees than you see just in the last few weeks. Yeah, we take that into consideration when we put these in. BG and gets really cranky if we don't.
Ms. Schwab,
Yes.
If there were say a shoulder height fence or wall, it would be curb, path, trees, wall, right?
Yeah,
Okay. What kind of wall would you suggest as being sort of adequate for screening, useful, long lasting,
I don't know.
fade into the background?
I don't know if I would think a 6-foot fence would be.
Not 6 foot, no, shorter.
Well, okay, 4 foot. We'd have to talk to the clients more about that because it also sometimes creates a safety hazard when you have a closed off space where you can't see it at all from the road. So we'd have to have those conversations before we created a space that was closed off with a fence or wall between the road and the buildings.
All right, you should, I would appreciate if you would have those conversations because you've got garden apartments that are right on Forest Drive and right on a shared path. So I think you have, equal, but not exactly the same security concerns.
Right, but
anyway, I'm just asking you for visually what would work. Maybe wire fence, maybe 5 foot, you know what I mean?
I think having clustered plant groupings with gaps would be maybe a better solution where there's some visibility into it as opposed to a solid barrier.
Okay. All right. All right. So there are solutions to it.
And I've taken septet training.
The what?
So have I.
Crime prevention through environmental design.
Yes. Well, this layout meets
Yeah.
those requirements as far as the interior
And it's something,
defensible space.
it's something I always have in the back of my mind when I look at a space.
Okay, good. All right.
Annapolis is not a crime-free area.
Later, if the project comes forward to us again, either in a work session or in a formal application, we can then, and things are much more firmed up, then we can really talk landscaping. But I trust you'll have it firmly in hand.
Well, I need Terry, you heard the thoughts about the moving the road around. I don't know. I mean, we talked about your concern that you're looking out over parking. What we find is residents want to pull up in their parking space and either bring their groceries or their children or whatever and go in the unit. They don't want to, they want as short a walk as possible. We use this similar kind of layout all the time and it's successful. So.
All right. Well, you've heard our comments.
Yeah.
And you heard mine. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good. We don't need to go over it. We're not going to decide it tonight. We're not going to argue over it. You've heard what we have to say. Yeah, obviously we disagree. Walking 5 or 10 feet more may become a point of major contention. It may not. But you've heard what we have to say and you've heard how we propose to make the project from my point of view, maybe others' points of view, how to make it a better project, okay? We're not here to bust your hump, but we're here to make it a better project.
Yeah.
And and bringing those buildings closer to the central green, putting your parking on the outside, makes it what often, when people do co-housing communities, that's what they want. So anyway, unless there's anything more to see, I've looked at everything that you've provided.
Yeah, same. And any other commissioners have questions, comments? Bob and I have been doing most of the talking, but I'd like to hear anything from anybody else if you have comments.
That's the end of our presentation.
Okay. Thanks.
Dave, you want to go first?
Well, yeah, I just agree with a lot of what you're saying. And I would like to see, it's hard when the things go this far down the path and we're expected to say, hey, this is good. But I think there's a lot that could be improved. I kind of disagree a little bit on the parking thing with you, Bob, with Oxford Landing, but that's beside the point because I think there's a lot of other reasons why they have such issues.
Okay.
But that's beside the point. I think the shared parking thing is something that should be looked at. And I really think that you can put a buffer on the road that houses aren't right, that parking's not right on the road, that it can be hidden a little bit. So I'd like to see what the next iteration looks like. And I'd like to get Tom's input too a little bit more because apparently Tom has made his points known that I guess haven't been addressed yet. So I'd like to hear the staff report later on as well. That's where I am right now with this.
Okay, Chairman, Commissioner Sale here. Could you go to, I think it's page 9 or 8 with a color picture and zoom in on it, please, so we can all see that easier? And Tom Smith, I'm going to ask you a question here. Thank you, Tom. Tom, I see these parcels. It looks like three parcels together and to make up the application, right? 3 parcels make one property application. Is that right?
I think we're going to be shown the site plan here.
What's the other one?
Site plan.
Taylor?
Yeah, the other one that had the site plan.
But
Sorry.
yes,
Rendered
Commissioner
site
Sales,
plan, please.
in a nutshell, all the parcels you saw earlier collectively, I believe Mr. Schuman said 5.7 acres make up the entirety of the plan development application as one.
And the street, Skipper's Lane, is going to be entirely on the property of this application, right?
Yes, sure.
Okay, so they're giving
All
up that.
right. That right of way will be dedicated to the city as it was with Village Greens and become a public street.
All right, so to get our Skipper's Lane, we're going to have to give up something to get Skipper's Lane. And they're giving up Skipper's Lane, that property, to get the rest rather than trying to go out on Forest Drive, which would be mayhem at that intersection. I get that. The American Legion right there next door, my feeling in the rendered site plan, what I've been hearing is it's almost like the American Legion property is not even part of the application. I know that's incorrect for me to state. It is absolutely part of the application. It's stated so, and it's got forest conservation put in there and everything else. But the property that the proposed buildings are on and the parking on the east side seems to be a whole lot of what we have been trying to get away from in history in Annapolis. And you did a great job of showing the history of how we've continually done that and continue to seemingly do that. So the history is there, and we're not breaking it here in my mind by just looking at, when I look at this, when I really delve down into this application, I see a big old chunk of what we have been doing, and we're going to use this property next door to be our excuse for it. And we're going to put trees on the Skipper's Lane, something you would normally do, and that'll add to our forest conservation. I get it, and that's legal. That totally makes sense. But when you look at it from a person who's going to move into this place, you're really just looking at the piece of property that the proposed buildings are on, the parking lot, and the rain mitigation. Because there's one little path that goes over to the American Legion. And there's, of course, the sidewalk on the street of New Temple, but the American Legion property, even though it's part of this application, seems to be a total segregated, separate piece of property where it's not really part of it. So I'd be willing to bet, Tom, that if you didn't have the American Legion part of the property and we just looked at it from what the proposed buildings are on that eastern chunk, you couldn't do what you're doing there because you just wouldn't have enough to make forest conservation, everything else, and make it all work. So, but I get that you can do that by giving up something elsewhere. You trade one for another, but we're getting more of the same of what we had in the past. And it's not really connected. It's not connected to the green space on the American Legion property that they have. So you can't really use it. There is one path that goes over there. So it is connected, but it doesn't really seem so. It seems separate. The entrance onto Forest Drive, there's only one walkway onto Forest Drive. I would think you'd want another one on the west side of that proposed building that fronts Forest Drive. The separation of it from Forest Drive, 40 feet. 40 feet's not a lot from a major highway intersection like that. You can never have enough, I'll be honest with you. And the headlights at that stoplight that will be facing south into the building all day long, all evening long. It's an unfortunate piece of property in the fact that it's right next to that section, and you're trying to mitigate it. And I see putting that building there, I'm guessing that you did that probably part of the reason is to actually block the rest of the development from all of that noise and headlights and traffic you're going to see up at the intersection. So I get it as a blocking mechanism more than anything else. So if you put parking there, it gives you more of a blocking mechanism, I guess. But what you're blocking is traffic from a parking lot. It just doesn't have an air to me of being inviting. It has an air of density, much like everything else around it, which you showed in the perspective. I think you've been better off in the presentation if you wouldn't have showed me any of that. I wouldn't have, it got my mind in the wrong place, I think. But yes, if we want to keep doing what we've done in the past, we would do this. The buildings look nice. I like the way the buildings kind of look. It's modern. It's quaint, and it could maybe deal with a few more balconies. I would think make it a little, maybe some Juliet balconies that would add some flavor to it. But you don't really get too much use out of a Juliet balcony. I do have a question. One quick question for the developer applicants here. These apartment condo townhomes, are they going to be fixed in what the application is for in their use, or could they sway around and end up being apartments or little condos inside for sale, or are they or vice versa? I think I missed that part or forgot. Could you please clarify that for me?
These are rental units?
Rental only. Could they be sold later on as individual housing, and that plan changed after the application was completed?
No.
Tom?
No.
We had that happen at Chinkopin before. That's why I'm asking. So, but just apartments. What's the largest apartment you're planning on having, and what's the smallest? Or all the same?
They're a mix of 1, 2, and 3 bedroom apartments.
Okay.
How many threes, how many twos, and how many ones?
Hang on. Go on, you can chime in.
It's on the second page, C2. I think there's 4 3-bedrooms, 5 2-bedrooms, and 3 1-bedroom. Is that right?
No.
Yeah.
No, what?
Here, and you got it. Right here. So there are, I can see it.
Oh no, I'm sorry. So
Okay, it's a mix.
they have the quantity in there next to
could
the
change.
sizes. Yeah.
Excuse me, COVID.
It's down at the bottom. They had 12 1-bedroom, 28 2.
Oh, there it is. Yeah. Yeah.
What is it? 12 ones?
12 ones, 28 2-bedrooms, and 18 3-bedrooms.
Right.
28.
28 2-bedrooms.
Gotcha.
How many
Yeah.
3 bedrooms?
18.
18. Okay. So the fact you're limiting the 3 bedrooms is, I guess, a good thing, and the fact you're limiting the amount of cars you'd be expected for bigger families. It is apartments, but as what Bob mentioned is true, rings true. Workforce apartments types, maybe. Ooh. The access for fire and doesn't seem to be a problem based on your existing design. That's a whole lot of asphalt. What kind of pavements were you guys thinking of using in the future? Anything to mitigate the heat that's coming off of that, and also the penetration of rainwater? Or are you just going to be asphalt?
There's some previous pavement.
Yeah, we were just proposing asphalt at this time.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. And access, as far as green space for a playground and people to do stuff, you can have quite a few kids, I would guess, in here, and teenagers. And again, on the south side of Forest Drive, there's not much to do. You got to cross Forest Drive and go to Pitmore Rec Center, which is already overloaded. And your nearest fields are even further than that. Other than that, I really wish there was something other than just a playground for the small kids. But what about the middle-aged guys? No little basketball court or anything, or is that planned to be in there as well somewhere?
And there's also community space in this building as well. So it's not just the playground.
But there's not a gym space, is there?
Yes, there is.
Yes.
There's a fitness center in the community building.
A fitness center? You mean with machines?
Yes.
Oh,
That could be
that's
like
not
a
a gym.
10 by 15, 20 room, you know, it's
Right.
what about outside of a basketball court? I mean, people have removed those because it's noisy and people don't like them, but I mean, it gives kids something to do other than running around the streets with nothing to do.
They're not popular in the middle of the residential site like this.
They're not, huh?
The recreation and parks requirements.
On Admiral Drive, they lost theirs with the redevelopment of that, of the apartments on Admiral Drive. And we've had quite a few complaints from people that actually wanted the basketball court back so the kids had something to do, rather than having to walk all the way to Germantown to play a little game.
Well, that one of the things we have is a resident services program, and if they'll be surveying the residents and including the kids, and if they're will work to develop programming indoors and outdoors for all ages and the adults.
But if it's not part of the initial development approval, it'll never get done.
Yeah.
And it may be that maybe the American Legion would want to devote some of their green space in the back along Skipper's Lane. I don't know. I can't speak for the American
Some
Legion.
of that parking lot. Why are we building so many parking spaces on the west side? What's the reason for that?
Well, they already exist.
They exist, or do we have really a rock lot that exists there? The pictures that I've seen.
I think that, and I'm not a member of the American Legion, but I'm probably the one here that's communicated with them the most. So I'm just going to go on record as saying I'm trying to clarify what I understand their plan is, but this would be up to them. As everybody knows from the Providence Point Planning Commission hearings, Providence Point was to be acquiring the American Legion right away and creating a curb cut for rear access along Skipper's Drive to the American Legion. As part of that process, the parking lot for the American Legion had planned to be paved. Right now, you're correct, Ben, it is rock, but it is planned to be improved. And I'm assuming that that's probably where some of this idea came from on the plan, how it's shown out. But the other thing, to touch on some of the other comments related to the American Legion's property, people are wondering what's going to happen with the American Legion property. The American Legion is a separate parcel that benefits this for a special mixed plan development. And it benefits the Legion from achieving the access and all that. But the low-income housing tax credit program funds the development of the apartments. Part of the nice synergy here between these two properties and Providence Point is that it gives the Legion the cash infusion that they had been counting on since the whole land swap idea was floated out in front of them, so that then they can make some of the improvements to their site. And the Legion has been unable to formally proceed with some of their plans, correct me if I'm wrong, because of the lack of resources. And I think this helps do some of what you're saying. It activates the whole parcel. It gives them more green space. They're already planting the garden on the side piece, but as I understand it, it's also planned to accentuate the whole property. But we can't really get to the phase of their improvements until they're compensated for their right-of-way. And they expected to be paid by Providence Point a while back, and that has not occurred yet. So it's all part of this whole process that I believe will be a benefit to that whole stretch of development to link this parcel through to the Providence Point when that comes to fruition.
I agree. But I would be interesting to know if the American Legion would be willing to dedicate in the lower left-hand corner, if they'd be willing to dedicate enough room for a basketball court, if the residential applicants would pay for it. I would appreciate if you'd make that communication.
I can certainly make that communication. I can tell you that the American Legion, is actively engaged with the community and working with youth. So it's something that can be considered. I mean, honestly, Pip Boyer is not that far. I live in August Woods, which is right by Pip Boyer. I walk from where I live down to Pip Moyer and down to the Legion. It's not that far of a walk.
And it'll get better with Skipper's Lane.
Skipper's Lane.
But I would, just to go back a step here, if you would communicate that proposal or suggestion,
yes,
that they might consider dedicating the space for a basketball court in the lower left-hand corner, if the developer would pay to have it constructed.
There's 70 parking spaces I count on the American Legion diagram here, which plus or minus, I guess. And on the right side, how many for the proposed development on the east side?
70 for the Legion and 67 or 70 for, it's actually 7 for the Legion, 7 for the Willows.
Right. Okay. So about 140 spaces. And I'm guessing you're going to have somewhere around 150 people, maybe or so, and that's going to be in that proposed development on the east side. It seems like we're cramming a whole bunch of people into a space that, and then the Legion side's like, oh well, that's part of the development, but you really can't use that. That's theirs. Don't park there. You know, park on your own because we need it for events when we rent out for events. So it seems it's just what the air of the development is to me. It's not spaced out to where everybody has more space. I mean, you have a building with a parking lot and a retention pond in the back that you can't really walk in because that's how those are. And you got a tiny bit of green space to walk all your dogs in. So if you're looking to get green space and go anywhere, you got to leave the development. But where do you go? Do you go walk into the Providence Point, which will be a little bit more spacey? You walk up and down the street? I guess so. It's very dense. It's a dense area. I just got to wrap my head around it. And right now it's a tough one to wrap around, but I'm looking at it. I've been looking at it. And everybody's made some
In
good
mind
points.
that it's
Thanks.
an infill site that I believe that the developer's portion is acquiring 3.4 acres. And by the time you deal with the dedications necessary for Skipper's Lane, you know, on a 3.4 acre site, when you're giving up at the city's request and requirement for the access road, I believe it's a half acre or so. It minimizes your ability to lay out the site efficiently. It works great, and we all understand the importance of that connection, but I think it requires a little compromise. You took the half acre in the rear, so as a result, the
I
setback.
get that. I totally understand that. It still looks like a lot to me, and I understand that, and I'm digesting all of it. But I mean, you don't have to have 3 whole huge buildings either. You know, you can maybe make the type 2 a little smaller and maybe add some recreational space in the southeast corner. You know, just back it up from Skipper's Lane a little bit, add a little bit more green space, and then they have some down there, you know?
Unfortunately,
It just doesn't seem like it.
so you're aware, this is a very competitive process. An application was submitted for tax credits. And so the number of units and some of the requests that you're making would be contrary to the allocation of the tax credits that the developer received. So they can't, it has to be an economically viable project, and eliminating a building because somebody wants more green space isn't viable and doesn't work with the whole low-income housing tax credit award anyway. Is that correct?
Yes, we're required to build 58 units in the unit mix that we gave them. And we're scored on, you know, the number of bedrooms. So if we make any major changes to what we represented, we'll lose the tax credit allocation and, you know.
I guess our whole process is jacked in because it's not like we're building the nicest place in the world. It looks pretty nice, but when I look at the space, I just don't see a lot of space there. That's my opinion. I don't want to drag down the rest of the brief. Does anybody, the other commissioners, want to comment? Go right ahead. I'm done.
Yeah, well, I think you've heard from all of us.
Actually, Alex, I have some comments. Really quick. I'll be brief.
Yeah, go ahead, Teresa.
So I want to echo Bob, Commissioner Waldman's comments as well. I think I'm just disappointed to see aesthetically that the buildings are on the perimeter of the parcel. I think, yes, there is minimal space. Yes, there was an half acre that needs to be compromised. But at the same token, this could have easily been resolved with some of the buildings being more centralized in the parcel and some of the parking on the perimeter, which would allow some walking in the community space in between the buildings and so on. The way it looks right now, I agree with Commissioner Sales that it simply looks as a parking lot. This looks very perfunctory, a little bit institutional. And so it's just disappointing. But I recognize where we are in this process. That's all I have.
As usual, Mrs. Rubio Dorsey is to the point and brief.
Very much so. Very nice.
I should try to be like her.
Yes.
Well, so any So I don't have any final thoughts other than, we're glad we had a chance to give you comments, and perhaps we can all talk with staff some more and maybe try to even out some of our sort of different perspectives here. I think that there's more discussion that has to take place at some point.
One quick question, is the garden plot counting towards green space or any requirements, Tom, for forest conservation or anything like that?
No, sir, Commissioner Sales. That parcel for the proposed American Legion and its healing gardens and so forth is not included in forest conservation.
I'm talking about the dark green area in the east side.
Yes, sir. That hashing that you see there, that what they also call parcel B, that is not included in forest conservation.
It isn't.
It isn't, because it's already in conservation.
Oh, it already is?
Yes,
Oh,
sir.
Okay, I didn't know that. I'm wondering if you did build some, if they were gonna make some garden plots, I mean, you would think they get some kind of green space credit for that. But I don't know, I'm just throwing that out there. It's part of the process and that's not considered. Thank you.
So Tom, do you have any final comments, or?
Chairman,
we're wrapping it up?
This has been, I think, very productive, and appreciate all the comments that the commission has made. I would respectfully disagree with one comment, and that is architecture. And I think architecture defines Annapolis. Just,
Whoa.
it is who we are and defines who we are.
Depending on what part of Annapolis you are, right? South
Fight
Forest
words.
Drive, we haven't really paid attention to it.
Them's fighting words.
Yeah. Well, I think that that's probably a pretty widely held opinion, I would think.
It's general.
No question, the applicant's done a ton of work though, and
Yeah.
appreciate it. And all the drawings, everything are very appreciated. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
If I could just close for our side.
Okay.
As you heard, we were funded through a statewide competition. It's a federal program that has deadlines. We see, I think a large part of our success was because of the delegation that went to bat for us. We're going to convene tomorrow and see what we can do with your comments. It'll be important to us to get back in as quickly as we can, so we can be mindful of those federal deadlines we're trying to meet, because they're non-negotiable. So just appreciate your time tonight, and we'll get right back in with what our solutions are to the comments you've given us.
Very good.
Very good. Thank you, Ben. Yeah. All righty. Well, I'll at this point declare the work session over. And again, thank you guys. So at this point, I'm going to reconvene the regular meeting of the Planning Commission, because we have two other issues to talk about, and hopefully we can do that briefly. I think at this point, so we'll reconvene with my virtual bang of the gavel. And I think we have to do a roll call here. I think you want to just run that real quick, Kimberly. I appreciate that.
Yes, sir. Mr. Pline,
Present.
Mr. Sale,
Here.
Mr. Iams,
Here.
Mr. Waldman,
Here.
Ms. Rubio Dorsey,
She is here. I accidentally kicked her back to the attendees.
Mr. Svakianudis. We don't have him. All right. We have 5 present at this time, sir.
Great. So we have our quorum. Okay. So there are two. Let me share the rest of the agenda here. So two other things new business to talk about, and they are discussion of modification of rules and procedures to change the time frame of rendering opinions, and a discussion on conflicts of interest. So neither of these, I think necessarily we will vote on at all. I just wanted to bring these up, and especially with number one, the modification of our rules. There's a process for advertising those changes, but I thought we should at least open the discussion on that, and then we'll just make a few comments about the issue of conflict of interest. So let me share. I put together a quick sheet on that for these new business items. Okay, so the first one is our time frame. So, in our rules of procedure, basically we say we're going to render opinions within 45 days, and based on our time frame for those two opinions that we approved earlier, they were pretty simple minor site plans. Excuse me, they were R2NC applications, and they were not controversial. And, it took us quite some time to get those done. And so, I'm proposing that we shorten those to 14 days, essentially to the next meeting. So for things that are minor site plans or these R2NCs, and leave the 45 days for major site plans or planned unit developments or that kind of thing. So, this is just my suggestion. I'm curious what any of the other commissioners have to say about that.
Well, I don't know if we're going to keep on this every 2-week things forever. This was just supposed to be more of a temporary thing. And I think the 14 days is a little short. I'd rather it be more like 30 days, personally. Just because of that.
Right.
And in case there's some issues. I know we had this last one was a little bit of delay, but that a lot of it had to do with the transition with the legal team, right?
Somewhat, yeah.
Yeah, but we try to do things. I mean, we strive to do it. But what if something comes up?
Yeah, if you have 30 days, so you end something, and then 30 days later, you're looking at the opinion in order. And if you wanted change and had to change it, that's why I guess another 2 weeks was given.
Mm-hmm.
So
Right.
30 days at least, plus another 5 for working days. So you at least 45 to 35.
35 to 45, yeah.
Well, wait a minute. What about 14 days or the next meeting? So that these minor site design things, they get done and they get out.
Well, why aren't we doing them earlier anyway? Is it somebody looking at what we had existing and saying, oh, I don't have to do it for 45 days? Maybe if you just put a sentence in there that says, or by the chairperson, amending it to calling for an earlier time. We could always say, yeah, get these and tell the legal, you're working for us. We want it within 14 days without even having a rule of it.
Well, I think with this legal team, it would help if it was all very black and white. I really do. It was, I really think that it should force everybody to get these minor plan, these minor site designs and R2NC stuff, get it out. And if you can't get it out in 14 days, at least at the next meeting, as David says, sometimes it may be 30 days till the next meeting, but
And then 5 working days after that to get it 35.
Why?
Well, that would be, we're only limiting the maximum. We're not limiting what the minimum could be. It doesn't limit the minimum. We could have tell legal, hey, we want that in 2 weeks by our next meeting, and we're not violating any rule. We're also not restricted by it already. Because when we go to 30 days, Dave's got an issue, an important issue, I think.
That's true. The cadence of our meetings is, it has been every 2 weeks for quite some time, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to stay that way. And so that's a fair.
And we could also get opinion and order out. Is what's stopping us from voting on that online for a small project or the opinion and order?
Yeah, and you have to make sure that we're not just saying these small opinions. If we're doing it, we're doing a blanket for everything.
No, I think we should distinguish.
You think we should? Okay.
Yeah, I really do. I mean, the small ones, like, we put these people through this stuff. And they're usually, there's never really been any kind of issues.
Small
The
or
big
less
stuff is the
complex?
big stuff. The big stuff is different.
It is. It is.
Well,
which is
and
good.
I worry that you say, where you say that there hasn't been any difference. I mean, there hasn't been any issues at all. So are we fixing something that's not broken? And it's just, we were just a little bit perturbed by this last delay.
So
Are we reacting to something we shouldn't be reacting to?
I hear you.
Al, I have a suggestion. What if you amended the rule, said that you said that Adam, request that an opinion be done within a shorter amount of time. I'm not sure how you would word that in your rules, but that would give you the option at the end of the saying this opinion, to be one of the simpler. We're requesting that this be done within 4 days, and you set the time on a case-by-case basis.
Or we can say it's 30 days and it can be extended by up to 14 days more by the chair.
Well, they do, it does say that in there.
Yeah.
We're not even,
That we can,
we can already do that the way the way it's written, the procedure.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, there's nothing stopping us from saying we want that opinion in 3 days, legal.
So this would just be an option for you, termination, to make it shorter.
Yeah.
Also,
It
That's
says
just
45 days. It could be 1 day if we deem so, or the same day.
Well, wait a minute. Then let's take a look at the existing language. We shall issue an reporter within no more than 45 days.
Within 45 days. So at some point within that 45 days. And
Okay,
then
the
obviously-
chairperson determines that more or less time is necessary. Because remember what you've been just saying is we can always say, look, we want these opinions done quickly because these people are waiting. And
so you're
chairman can-
recommending, Bob, to just add the words "or less" in that third line of
Yes.
919.
More time or less time is necessary. Do you understand, Ben, what I'm trying to do here?
Yeah, but the way I look at it, you can already do that. Within 45 days, as a chairperson, I could say, I want this opinion, or the commission, we could say, we want this opinion within 2 days. It's easy, it's quick, and we want to give it to the people. And if
Well, and
we-
I think that's part of the problem, right? Is that right now we don't declare which day we'd like to see the opinion. I think the problem is that the issue that we had was that because we had 45 days, then it was, oh, we're not going to get this opinion out for 45 days. And so I think what we're trying to do is say that once discussion has been concluded, it should
We've
be
always
issued no
told
more than
people in
14.
the past to get it done early because it's easy and there was no problem. Is legal? Did they bounce back and tell us no? We have 45 days to do it.
no, nobody.
That's exactly what happened.
No,
Well, that's what I interpreted.
well, I mean, for the record, that didn't happen. I mean, nobody said we need 45 days.
Well, no,
But-
that's not exactly, it was stated back to me, to us, that we have 45 days to get it done, we'll get it done.
Yeah, the planning commission shall issue a written opinion and order. It doesn't say legal here. It says the planning commission.
Well, I
If it
mean-
works for us. We're going to tell you when we want it because it's when we want to put it out. I'll be honest with you. That's the way I read that.
I think a nudge, more or less time.
I have no problem with that. You want to define that?
Yeah. Without,
It basically says you could do whatever you want. Written opinion and order issue a written opinion order at the discretion of the chairman's decision, but no later than 45 days. You're trying to protect the applicant from getting hosed by having something go.
Yeah,
45
yeah.
days.
Okay, so not to muddy the waters, but the code actually has other time limits in it than you have in your
Well, let's consider that.
so for plan developments, the time for for within 30 days of the conclusion of the public hearing, this is on a plan development, the planning commission shall decide to approve the application subject to specific conditions, or deny the application. So, that has been customarily taken in the past to mean that there's supposed to be an opinion adopted within 30 days of the conclusion of the public hearing on a plan development. I think in the last few years, we've out in a more timely fashion. So we have had to deal with these timeline issues, but
So frankly, our procedures in the code are at odds.
there's a
because
little
they
bit of, right. There's
Yeah,
a,
but our
there's a
written
little bit
opinion
of
and
a
order is not our
disconnect.
decision. It's a written version of it. Our opinion, our decision's already been made before that opinion and order has been.
But that doesn't say that, the code doesn't say that you can't get the opinions in a shorter amount of time. And I think really what Alex's objective here, as I understood it, was that he would like to create a path that we could have opinions on that are not as complicated and as detailed in a shorter time frame that might be mandated. Rules were by the code. I
it's
think
a nudge to get that done faster.
right. So maybe we should take the 45 days out and just say, as cross-reference the code requirements, which are different. Site design plan reviews have a different time frame.
Well, I mean, maybe this
What
requires some more thought, because in the code of 30 days from the public hearing, that's for a vote. And then this, I mean, the way I read that is that's 30 days from a public hearing that you decide, and then you got 45 days to render a written opinion. So it's really 75 days.
Well, I don't think that's the way we've interpreted that. The site design chapter actually says that within 45 days, you have to approve with commissions by the application and issue a written opinion containing findings and conclusions. It actually ties the issuance of opinion to the 45-day plan, 21-22. So it's as specific in the plan development chapter, but all plan developments also are major site designs. I mean, there's some anyway, so you would still be tied to that under the site design, even if it was a plan development, still timelines and site design.
So that's really where the 45 days comes from.
Yeah. Okay. So one thing you could do is decide on a strategy that you want to implement in terms of, and then we could work on some language, achieve whatever your decided upon goal is.
Well, I mean, we don't, as I said, we don't have to decide this tonight. I just wanted to bring it up. And I think we've had probably as much discussion as we need to have. And we can, frankly, we can work this offline too. I mean, there's no reason we can't do that. But I just wanted to do it, while we have everybody together. So let's just.
How about that? Let's see what happens. Let's see if applications come down the line and the chairperson says, we'd really like to have this opinion done, finished and in our hands 3 days before our next meeting.
Yeah, we can try that.
See what happens. And if it doesn't happen and we get all sorts of excuses, then we change our rules.
Well, why change your rules? Because what you just said should be able to happen, and you fire the legal team and say, I don't even want to see it the next meeting. You will have no billable hours because I will never call for you to come to a meeting. Thank you very much. Seriously. They're working for us. We're paying them with our tax dollars.
Yeah. Well, okay. Yeah. Okay, Ben.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I think that we've had a productive discussion on that, and we can just table this for the moment. So thank you for you guys' opinion on that.
I move to table this issue.
I'll second that.
All right.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. So the second one is on conflicts of interest, and so this came up, in one of those discussions in the R2NC where and it's basically part of our process that, and it's in our rules that it's incumbent on commissioners to self-identify any potential conflicts of interest, prior to the discussion of a particular project. And so, when that arose a few meetings ago, I didn't handle that in as much depth, I think, as I should have. So that with some constructive criticism has got me to think some more about this. And what I'm planning on doing here in the future is that, if you look at the city code, that section 208040 is prohibited conduct and interest. And of course, we have a section in our rules about conflicts of interest. But, I think in order for us to essentially decide whether one of our fellow commissioners should recuse themselves, I think it's important to come up with a sort of a standard set of questions, and this doesn't have to be codified anywhere, but a standard set of questions that we can ask that will give us enough information to try and assess whether we should request that person recuse themselves. And so I've just listed them there. And in looking at what's in the city code and in our rules, I think these questions more or less kind of sum up all of the things in those pieces of code in our rules, which will give us, let us ask that of the commission, ask these questions of the commissioner to explain, and I think we'll be able to get to a good understanding of what that conflict is. So I sent these around via email, and so I'm curious if anybody has any comments.
I think the questions you've laid out are nice. I think we need to add one more, and this was something I brought up several meetings ago as well, is, has any of the commissioners had discussion about this application amongst, other commissioners prior to this coming to the meeting? I think that's also an important potential conflict as well. Has there been any kind of discussions or opinions rendered prior to this application coming forth from the commission?
Or would that be more ex parte communications? Is that a separate thing?
It would fall under ex parte, but that also falls into this section. It's in the same section of the prohibited conduct of interest.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, that to me really does fall under ex parte communications more so than necessarily a conflict between a commissioner and an applicant or applicant's representative. But that's a very valid question to ask, for sure. So did anybody, we're not voting on anything here, but if I just wanted to bring these up publicly, and if anybody identifies a conflict, barring any other comments or questions about these, this is the kind of questioning that I would, a line of questioning that I would go down to try to suss out, the depth of any potential conflict. So anyway, I mean, we can stop here unless anybody has other questions or comments, and I'll send these back around again just so everybody has them. But it's good, it's a good refresher for all of us to always keep that in mind when any application comes in front of us.
So Alex, you are going to not formally adopt these, but just procedurally adopt these, that you will, you're in the future, and then maybe you would want to send them to all members, so everybody's aware that you all agreed tonight that this we're going to follow.
Yeah, I will send that around, and again, this isn't codified anywhere. It's just the kinds of questions we would.
Right, it's a protocol as opposed to, but I think it's important that everybody have a copy of it.
Yep, I will do that.
That's just a suggestion.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
No problem with it. Looks good. I like it.
Of course, Ben would like it.
I know somebody who wouldn't know.
All righty. So so this brings us to our last item, which is adjournment. So anybody?
Tell
want-
you what's on the
Motion to adjourn.
agenda for the next meeting.
I'm sorry.
I just want to tell you what's then on September 1st.
Okay, shoot.
You all are really lucky you're having another session. And this one will be on Parole Place, which is the project that is the intersection of Old Solomon's Island Road and Forest Drive. And this is a project I think that staff feels has really come a long way and is looking pretty good.
Is it? I'm sorry, you were a little fuzzy. Is this an actual application or a work session?
No, it's a work session. It's a
Okay.
work session for Parole Place.
Okay.
It's a mixed-use project.
Another work session that's way down the road before we see it.
Well, September 1st is not way down the road, Ben.
You missed that. You missed it.
I meant,
All right,
think
I'm
that
good.
this
I move
one-
that we adjourn the meeting, Alex.
right.
Well realized.
I would second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Thank you, everybody.
All right, thank you very much.
And Julian, you can take us off YouTube.